Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we are going to be talking with Ric Arenstein from the Virginia Public Access Project, known most familiarly to people in Virginia as VPAP. Thank you so much for being here, Ric.
I'm happy to be with you, Catherine.
So 20 years, this is a big, 2 decades of bringing information to the public regarding politics, regarding electoral maps.
Yeah, it started as simply money in politics. So 20 years ago, nobody really knew who was giving what to whom. Virginia is one of only 6 states in America that has no limits on political giving. Any corporation, any organization can give as much as they want to anyone for state office. And the insurance, what makes that okay, if you believe that's okay, is that everything must be disclosed. Any gift over $100 must be disclosed. Well, it's been disclosed, but 20 years ago it was disclosed at the State Board of Election or the clerk's office, or wherever the information was, and put into a filing cabinet. And unless you were very informed and very assertive, your ability to get to that information was pretty limited. And so the newspapers in Virginia, who didn't have a common set of facts about political money in Virginia, got together and funded a common database. And they began, 5 of them, putting this information into computers that were probably as large as the studio.
That's true.
So that they could create for themselves to report on a common set of facts. And they did it and realized that what they had was pretty valuable. But that left alone, it was history. And so they decided to create an organization which would carry this forward. And thus was born in 1997 the Virginia Public Access Project.
But people really, it's VPAP, and so
it is VPAP.
It's VPAP.org, and that's just a shorthand. And we were talking earlier about the fact that people get to the point where you use acronyms and then nobody can remember anymore what they actually stood for. But this really is about transparency, and so you're actually taking it to its logical level, which is, especially in this past election, where people are like, I'm not taking money from Dominion, I pledge not to take money from Dominion. Your ability to show exactly where people's donations have come from give every single person in the Commonwealth of Virginia and beyond a window.
It does. We call it our window, your window into Virginia politics. Our mission is pretty simple. We take complex information and make it available to everybody in easily understood ways. That's a pretty simple mission. It's pretty complicated to get to that because our database, if you will, is composed of all political contributions. It's composed of all lobbying reports. It's composed of all candidate disclosure forms, elected official disclosure forms, so that you really can, and we aggregate the information, so that people can understand the complexity of finance, of money in politics, what the influence of money can be in politics. And we're not for money, we're not against money, we're not for any candidate or against any candidate. Our philosophy is give the citizens the information they need. Let them be, I think Jefferson said this originally, let them be informed and they will make good decisions. And that's what we do. And our website is designed to do just that. You can go to our website, look up candidates. You can look at corporations who give. You can dissect this information any way you want. But the goal at the end of the day is that you will understand who is trying to influence whom and who is receiving support from whom and what their interests are. And you can apply that to your view of what ought be and what ought not be in your own view of who should be representing you.
So on my hit parade, my 2 favorite things about VPAP is the homepage where you can put in your address and it will tell you who your congressman is, your state senator, your delegate. And during this last election, there were a lot of grassroots activists who were like new to the fight And they were, talking with people, some of whom were not aware of who their delegate was. So it was kind of a party trick to go to vpap.org on my smartphone, and it has the box, and I'm like, give me your address, and I'm going to tell you who represents you. And I really do think that is such a simple, powerful thing when people don't know, like, oh, I'm really not sure who my delegate is.
And that's actually that tool is called All Politics is Local. And we introduced that 2 years ago. It has been part of our changing the direction, if you will, that VPAP is headed in. Our board decided 3 years ago that we didn't only want to serve the political elite, if you will, the insiders, the lobbyists, the legislatures, and corporations. We wanted to serve all Virginians. And so what we did was created All Politics is Local so that folks could go in, put their address in, and our site reorients itself to you. And you can see the news of the day that affects you. You can see who in your zip code is contributing to candidates. You can see who your legislators are. And then you can dig down and see, learn about your legislators. I suspect more than a few people don't know who represents them in the House of Delegates or the Senate. And doesn't mean people aren't educated, it means they're busy. And so to the extent that we can make it easy for people to find out who, and then find out who they are in a way that reflects how they vote, who they receive funds from, in a legislator's perspective, who they have investments with. I'd like to think that legislators use the conflict of interest provisions as they should, not to vote on issues that can affect them personally.
Right.
We all have investments, and we all have things that we care about, and we all have to make decisions in life. And but this is the public's way of making sure, in their mind, that the game is being played according to the rules.
So my second favorite thing, and again, it's public facing, is the VA News.
Right, and I've got the news boy here with me.
Right, but VA News, and it started out, I think Tom Whipple.
Mary Margaret Whipple's husband.
Yes, Mary Margaret Whipple's husband, Tom, used to get up at the crack o' dawn and do basically a clipping service that took all of the headlines from all of the newspapers all over Virginia that were politically or economically focused, and he would send them out by email. Well, anybody can sign up for this.
They can. So Tom did that. I remember getting them 20 years ago. Tom got tired for getting up at dark 30.
Yeah.
And I think 5 or 6 years ago, he was looking for someone to take it over, and we thought this was a great compliment to the work we were doing.
I think it's one of the greatest assets that VPAP has to offer.
We think so too. It's a free service, and you can go to vpap.org and subscribe. So we have someone who gets, not me, we have someone who gets up at dark 30 and scours every newspaper, every online newspaper, every radio and television station. We've tried to modernize this. We used to only do newspapers, but now we're doing electronic and cable media as well. We have a pretty strong criteria. Like everything, our criteria is outlined on our site. So we don't put political blogs up, we don't put opinion. Right. We do some editorial.
And it says editorial.
Right, and everything is defined that way. And it goes out today to 11,000 people every single morning, 5 days a week, 6 days a week during the session, and occasionally 7 days a week when the session is very busy. And it provides people with every story in every media in Virginia that has to do with Virginia politics. And the link is there, and the stories are there. And it's a bit of a fire hose.
It is.
But you can take on or take out and click through as often as you want. Our click rates are incredibly high. We have a very loyal readership.
I read it, and it introduces you to things like the Augusta Free Press. I mean, I already get the headlines from the Richmond Times-Dispatch and the Roanoke Times, but some of these other smaller papers, because there's an interesting article in it, and so I'm sure the papers around the Commonwealth of Virginia have also benefited from the fact that people in different parts of Virginia are getting a different perspective on what the news is somewhere else that affects all of us.
No question about it. So all of us painfully watch cable news and see the different perspective that's available there. Well, the difference in newsprint is a little different. It's more of a regional slant rather than a right-left slant. But I think that's really important because when folks get together in Richmond, they're bringing the perspective they have from home with them. And it's really important that all of us understand who our not only what our legislators are doing, but who they're talking to. And what the people that they're talking to have read that morning. So this is a really valuable service that we provide. Again, I want to state that it's free. We really are a public media. We see ourselves as part of the media world.
I do too.
And we are. So VA News is something that we're very proud of. The newsboy logo is, we love him. We know he's not wearing a helmet. But he's a throwback, and he's a throwback that for us is a tip of the hat to print media. We really believe in the importance and the tradition of print journalism, and we're worried about the future of print journalism. And we were created by print journalism, and while cable and broadcast news today and internet are really important, print journalism is where the deepest coverage of stories begins. There are only 2 newspapers in Virginia today, the Times Dispatch and the Washington Post, which have news bureaus at the Capitol. And so we're really now dependent on 2 newspapers and the Associated Press for all of the coverage that comes out of there. And those folks depend on us. They are subscribers to us. We provide services to the newspapers. We were quoted 3,000 times last year. Our data was cited.
Wow, 3,000 times?
3,000 times last year.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we think so. And so we're valuable to the newspapers. We're also, in a way, part of them. It's really important that we exist as a resource for them, because without the common understanding, the common set of data that everybody operates under, it becomes very difficult to cover state politics, and for there to be a common understanding of the stories that are being developed on the floor of the General Assembly during the session.
Well, and that's what I want to talk more about too, is that you've got a lot of collected data, and it's not really about the data, it's about how to interpret, model, and present it in some way that people can figure out what the data means. Right? So
it is.
So this has been something that I think VPAP has really honed, and with every year that goes by, you have new tools. I love the data visualizations. And so when we get back from our break, we are going to go deeper, a deeper dive into what VPAP.org is actually doing. And Ric is going to tell us, too, how this is going to factor into the 2018 legislative session that starts on January the 10th down in Richmond. So join us after the break to find out more about VPAP.
Guess what? I have some news for you. There's free food right there, junk food. You see that truck? Oh, jeez. It's a 2 Michelin star chef. All for free, ladies and gentlemen. All for free.
Here we have a panzanella with summer vegetables and pesto. Enjoy. How we doing?
Fantastic. So what do you got going on underneath that plate there?
This food is really about to be thrown away.
Yeah. Bro?
Is there something wrong with this food? Where did you get it from?
From farmers markets. They put aside the ugly vegetables and the ugly fruits.
Carrot top, soft avocados. It was all food that was going to be discarded.
Even the drink you had is made from like a little bruised peach. Did it taste a little bruised?
Great. It's good.
The average person throws away 24 pounds of food a month.
That's a lot.
Isn't that a lot? Go visit savethefood.com for more information. Thank you. Junk food time!
to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. And the topic of the night is all about VPAP.org. And joining me is Ric Arenstein, who is going to show us some of the interesting things that the data has shown you about the most recent election, which was quite exciting here in Virginia.
Yeah, and you said it in the last segment. This is really, we have a huge database. It's beyond my scope and any one person's scope to understand it all. But we've got a team of young people who are really good with pictures and analysis and understanding the data. And so we've begun to put things into visualizations in a much more sophisticated way, not forgetting that our audience has a broad constituency.
Yes, it is.
So some of them are complex, some of them are easy to understand, all of them are easy to understand than the data themselves. They bring them into my office occasionally and I'll say, this is just too complicated. They put it up anyway, but they know that
it has to pass the basic Ric test.
I understand it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to, but I think I'm fairly typical of the folks out there who are interested. So we started this year. We doubled the amount of visualizations that we did this year. It's a huge investment for us. This first picture is of the money that was raised by the two candidates in the election this year, and you can see it started off pretty early with the candidates doing about the same through the summer. And then as Labor Day passed, Ralph Northam's campaign began outraising substantially Ed Gillespie's campaign until they got to Election Day. And then, as I'll show you in the next slide, a lot of money came in from outside Virginia. And by Election Day, these two candidates both had about as much money as they could use to tell their stories effectively in Virginia, and they're still raising money. Although, as you can see in the last at the end of the graph, it's fallen off significantly. But we ended up a reporting session just a week ago, and that's what this particular slide talks about. So this next slide
a little more complex.
It's a little more complex, and it tells a story that's really troubling to a lot of people. It used to be until 2009 that most of the money raised for gubernatorial and statewide races in Virginia came from Virginians. That all changed in 2009, and Virginia became a bellwether state for how the R's and D's were doing nationally. And when that happened, because we are an off-year election, it became a reaction to who the president was, and money started to pour into Virginia from the national parties, from special interest groups, and you can really see here in the last two cycles how that has really exploded. And almost half the money now that's spent in these races comes from outside Virginia. The agenda of people whose goals may or may not align with Virginians themselves.
But there's just no one competing. When only us and New Jersey have an off-year governor's race. There's no congressional races. We're the only game in town, so we're an easy place to deposit money.
We are, and it's had a chilling effect on Virginians investing in these races. Virginians are beginning to say, wait a minute, why should I invest in local or in state politics when mine is a drop in the bucket compared to the money that's dumped in from other folks? So it is having a chilling effect, and you can see this here as it has been now for 3 cycles, and it's again, VPAP doesn't. We're not for out-of-state money. We're not for. Really important to understand that we really don't. Our analysis is intended to explain the numbers. It's not intended to say this is good or this is bad. So with respect to whether it's good or bad, I think Virginians can figure that out pretty quickly. But we're trying to tell the story, and this slide, while a little complex, I think is pretty clear about where we are headed in terms of campaign finance in Virginia. So this is fun. This is something that was new this year. We are able now to track television advertising. So leading up to the election, we were able to see on a week-by-week basis which candidate was spending how much money. And you can see in the map that it's not only how much they were spending, but where they were spending it. Obviously, Northern Virginia, because of the Washington influence here, very expensive market. Much more resources, percentage-wise, being poured into Richmond and Hampton Roads. But in addition to how much and where the money is spent, it was interesting for us to see which ads were being run, so that you could really begin to look at what message each candidate was trying to offer in which part of the state. And believe me, the candidates have a very different media strategy in Northern Virginia than they do in Southwest Virginia and in Hampton Roads. And this particular tool was really helpful to us in trying to understand that. And then this is sort of the transition slide or visualization between the run-up to the campaign and election night itself. This is early voting, and people will draw whatever conclusions they want out of this slide, but it's clear that the number of people voting early in Virginia has changed dramatically.
And that's interesting because we don't really technically, have we have early voting, but you have to have a qualifying reason.
We have absentee. We still call it absentee.
We call
voting.
it absentee. So the deal is you're not going to be in the town where your precinct is during the day.
So you say.
So you say. So, but to your point, I have been aware that that's a strategy. That's a strategy, and
Virginians are clearly, markets have a way of setting themselves, and Virginians are clearly exercising this right in a more vibrant way.
But it's interesting, in the event that you held at George Mason University after Virginia votes, Chris Levitt, who was the campaign manager for Ed Gillespie, said that generally Republicans don't do as much early voting as Democrats do, that the Republican voters really seem to want to show up at the polls and push the button or fill out the thing in every election.
And there were those, rightly or wrongly, that interpreted this early voting surge as an early sign that the Democrats might do better than expected in the election. We tend to think that it has more to do with people's with the marketplace taking care of itself. But that's what the parties say. He says they like to vote on election day, and the Democrats say they like the opportunity to give as many people as many different days to vote as they can, and that's ultimately a decision that the people of Virginia and the legislature are going to have to work out. But I think this slide clearly shows that Virginians want to vote earlier, more and more often, and we have busy lives, and
you have gridlock, you have traffic, you have sick kids and terrible commutes and just all kinds of things, right?
Right. So we went from money coming in, money being spent on television, people beginning to vote, and then election night. And election night was pretty interesting. So all of the national cable networks were focused on Virginia because it was pretty obvious what was going to happen in New Jersey. And by 8:30, this election had been called basically for Ralph Northam. And he developed a lead about 8:30 that kept on through the night. We were focused otherwise. VPAP is a very granular organization. It is. People often ask us, could we do this in other states? And the answer is, it could be done in other states, but it was born out of a real deep knowledge of Virginia. And so we knew that these House races would be important. We had no way of knowing, nor did anybody, what would happen on election night, but we were prepared. And this was what our site looked like on election night, beginning about 8:30. We got to the plus 15, I'm guessing it was around 10 o'clock. This was the wave, and we began to see it about 8:30. When we were looking at who was calling the state race, the first race I looked at was the Danica Rome Bob Marshall race.
Yeah.
And I looked across to David Poole, who's our executive director, and I said, David, I think this race is over. He said, no, the votes are in. I said, there's a lot of vote to come in. I said, no, this is 70% of the vote in, and she's 10 points up. And we sort of forgot about the rest of the night on the state-wide races and really began to focus and saw some,
Everyone was.
well, they were focused on it because we made it possible.
You did. I mean,
folks.
I was standing in the Northam Victory Party at George Mason University, and everybody had their smartphones out, which, by the way, is the other amazing thing about having VPAP being mobile friendly, is that people could access information and data as we were all standing there in the room. And you're right. It was by the time we knew that Northam won, everybody's attention was turned to what about the delegate races.
And it stayed that way until late in the evening.
Yeah.
We had 3 times the number of people visit our site election night than at any time in VPAP's history. We had 500,000 refreshes on our site. So people were constantly, pushing their phone to get the most up-to-date results. And we really feel good that we were there for the story that was really the story of the night. Not to say that how Virginia went in terms of statewide wasn't important either in Virginia or nationally. But the real change in Virginia is these 15 seats now. And what that will mean in terms of how the legislature will behave, how it will organize itself, how it will behave, how it will work with the governor. And so this is really a sea change. I'll point out, I'll come back maybe to my Virginia candidate. Sorry to do that, but this is the party performance. This is the beginning of what happened after, what we showed after the election. And you can see here that the division in our state is great. In the Southwest, the division was such that Republican districts went more Republican than had ever been before, and here in Northern Virginia, much bluer than they had been before. This is how a traditional map looks. When you change the map and you use hex graphing, these maps change for population. So you can see here that the performance is the same, but you look at the impact of the deep population or the heavy population in Northern Virginia, Central Virginia, and all of a sudden the state appears a lot bluer than it did
when you just looked at the geography.
Right. You said before we went on. You said
trees don't vote. Trees don't vote. There's a lot of trees in Southwest Virginia, and the counties are huge, and the districts are huge because it's rural. So there's less population, so the districts are big and spread out. But this map that shows the population density and how the population density voted is clearly an indicator of just how far the state has moved as a whole.
Yeah, and I thought about that when I saw this map. I thought about national election night and how the country, how different the country would look if you mapped it this way.
Well, and so when we get back, we're going to ask you to clue us in a little more about how VPAP sees things differently. So please join us after this break, and we will do a deeper dive into some of these fascinating maps and data from election night 2017 when we return. So please join us after the break.
For all the papas out there, let's stop what we're doing and take a moment to be with our kids. They can be loud moments, goofy moments, dorky moments. It doesn't really matter. Every time dads take a moment to be with their kids, it's pretty momentous. So let's all take a moment to make a moment today.
Hey, did you know that 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Go to theshelterpetproject.org and search your local shelters and rescues. Go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
We cannot be bystanders.
We can stop to make sure someone is okay.
We can warn someone when their drink isn't safe.
And disrupt the situation.
We can
get someone a cab.
Or walk them home safely.
We can make campuses safer for our friends.
Our roommates.
Our classmates. Our fellow human beings.
We cannot be bystanders.
We can intervene.
It's on us.
All of us.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
When it comes to saving money,
what? Parents!
Don't act like a baby.
Oh, it's like they're having their own little meeting.
This is so humiliating. Be the boss. I'm the boss.
What the?
Power nap. You were saying. And make a budget. Let's get to work. Need a little help? Stacy, read back the notes.
I can't read. What's it say?
Create a personalized savings plan and get other tools and tips.
We can share.
You obviously didn't go to business school. At feedthepig.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me tonight is Ric Arenstein from VPAP, and we are having a wonderful discussion about the most recent election. And Brent from Manassas actually called us and asked if he can find you on social media. Do you have a presence? I believe you do on both Twitter and Facebook.
We do. This has been a major effort of ours this year, and it coincided with a very active Virginia electorate. So the timing couldn't have been better for us. We are very active on Facebook, and we're very active on Twitter. So we have accounts on both. And election night, we fed them. And in fact, we've used social networking or social media. I have to be careful. At age 65. My terminology is not always industry standard, but we're using social media much more than we have before, and the key is pretty simple. We're presenting information in ways that everyday citizens can understand, but we've got the obligation to bring them to our site. And so this year, we've used focusing on the statewide election, we used a new tool called My VA Candidate. This is sort of a step out of the box for VPAP, but it proved to be pretty successful. We gave a 18-question quiz to Virginians who could take this quiz, and we told them who they most likely align with. So if you were a typical Democrat, you probably came out 75% with Ralph Northam, maybe 20%, 30% with Cafaya, and you'd be surprised that 20% of the time you agreed with Ed Gillespie. And if you were a Republican, the numbers probably came out. I think what was good for the public in this is, number one, they found out there was a third candidate in the race, and they may have opted not to vote for him in great numbers, but we were committed to the notion that there were three people in this race, and they had different ideas, and those ideas were worthy of being aired. And number two, it gave people an honest chance to see whether they were Democrats or Republicans, how closely their views were aligned with the candidates for governor. We had almost 70,000 people take this
70,000, that's amazing.
Yeah, we're pretty pleased with that, and we pushed it out considerably on social media, but we really didn't know at the outset how many it would attract, and so now we have folks who are coming to our site. We also got people's emails, not for any nefarious purpose, but we sent them a reminder on election day if they asked us to of who they had decided they liked, and a reminder to go to the polls and where their polling place was. And I want to say, I'm going to guess here a little bit, that about 20% of the people who took this asked to be reminded on election day of where they voted and who it was that they came out and supported.
That's kind of interesting too, and I like the fact that you allow people to opt in. I mean, it's much better system to allow people to click and say, I'm opting in.
It's a really important component of our website. We don't do much phishing. We really leave people alone. We don't track to our detriment. In some cases, we don't follow people around our website. People, if they want to sign up for VA News, they have to give us their email. If they give money to us, then they go on our website because we are transparent. Everything we do is open and up on the website, but really important to us that the integrity of that be kept. So right, we only ask that you don't have to. We also have a pundit contest. I'm sure that you have participated in it, and you don't have to. We also have a survey, and you can participate in all of these things for your own entertainment or education without having to convey any information to us. We're really not interested in collecting information.
Well, so the thing about your Twitter account is that's another way for people to follow you without it being intrusive. So VPAP Updates is your Twitter account.
Yes, it is.
And you've got like 8,000 followers on there. So that's people who get the things updated through Twitter who are already on Twitter. And the same for Facebook. You know, you've got a couple of thousand followers on Facebook. You know, you're kind of meeting people where they already are.
Absolutely.
And some people prefer to get their information that way.
Yep, and we also have, I'm glad you mentioned our handle, because we also provide updates to subscribers. So you can subscribe to our morning news service, but you can also subscribe to updates from VPAP that you receive through your email about state elections, about the legislature. You know, it's coming up, as you said, on January 10th, and if you want what we're putting out there that's uniquely about the legislature, about local elections, and federal elections, which we'll talk about a little, I know we'll talk about a little later, and what's going on in 2018. But we're really now in that transition period from with the election to what the legislature is going to look like. And I think that's a pretty interesting, I think folks are wondering now what a 51-49 House is going to mean in terms of elections. So I want to show a slide here, if I can, or a visualization. This was one that we knocked out about incumbency. So
yes.
The wave, the tidal wave, if you will. Well, this is not the first tidal wave in Virginia's General Assembly. Back in 2009, when Barack Obama was elected president, 9 seats that were blue were taken over by Republicans, as opposed to the 12 now that have shifted, or the 12 incumbents who were defeated. And so these waves in Virginia are, again, they may not be they clearly are not all about who the legislators are and how their records comported with their constituents. There are much bigger factors that are impacting these elections than how they voted on local issues, how they voted on social issues. This was clearly a reaction to the Trump presidency, to the Trump election, and this is a national phenomenon that goes on now. And depending on where we are 4 or 8 years from now, I think you'll probably begin to see swings like this. I think we're in some sort of a this is not a VPAP opinion. This is a Ric opinion. I think we're in some sort of a settling out period in our country's political climate, and I think these swings are probably going to be with us for a while. And then I think if we can find a way back to civility, and we can find a way back to people working with each other to genuinely solve issues rather than trying to win the next election, then I think maybe these swings will begin to diminish, and maybe Virginia gets back to voting about Virginia rather than being so affected by outside parties.
That's true. I mean, I think we have been reactionary to a lot of things on the national level. But keep in mind, too, we should speak to the fact that Virginia has elections every year. Not every state in the United States has elections every year, but we do, because we have municipal elections coming up in May. I live in the city of Fairfax, so you have information about candidates in municipal elections.
Some, not the whole state, but we're spreading our wings. And
you are, but you have some there, and you have congressional information.
We do.
So that is coming up in 2018. And then in 2019, we're back to House races again and Senate races again. So every year, VPAP is engaged because every year Virginia is unique, and then we have elections.
Yeah, this story it's like chapter after chapter after chapter, and the people who follow us, this year was particularly compelling because of 100 seats and the change in the party in power in Washington, and a pretty compelling election between 2 pretty centrist candidates. So I think there was a great storyline in this election, and that caused people to be engaged on both sides of the aisle. But you're right. This is VPAP doesn't come out every 3 years or every 4 years. We're working now on the legislative session and beginning to lay our internal groundwork for how we'll cover the Senate race and the House races. Now, we don't track money in those races quite as intently or intensely because they're federal organizations that that do that. But it's available through our site, and we'll be watching behaviors, and we'll be tracking citizens and doing all that we can to show what this race is going to shape up as. There are going to be a couple very compelling House races, and there are usually some surprises. And we've got a huge Senate race in Virginia.
That's right.
We have the third candidate, Tim Kaine's race, 3 Republican contenders right now for their nomination as of today, and all eyes are going to again be on this.
On Virginia.
This is a pretty interesting year in Virginia again. So I hope that we can continue to. I hate the it's overused, but we want to stay relevant, and we think we are. I go back to the media. We are a source of information, and we partner with the media because they use the information that we present in ways that are easily presented to the consuming public. And we're worried at VPAP that the coverage of Virginia politics is becoming a 2-horse race between the Post and the TV. And we're constantly focusing on what our role is insofar as making sure Virginians are informed. And we're looking down the road at what a continued diminution in print journalism might mean for the state, and how we can be of value, because being relevant to people in their lives and and being committed to making sure the Virginia story is told to people so they go to the polls informed is really important to us.
You know, I think one of the things that it's very helpful, like when we're looking at the congressional races, is how the districts perform that are in, you know, so you have the bigger districts are the congressional districts,
right.
Then you have Senate districts, then you have House districts, and then you have precincts within the different House districts. But, you know, on VPAP's website, you can go to the 1st congressional district, for instance, and you can see how it voted in the presidential election.
Yes,
It'll
can.
tell you this percentage voted for Trump, this percentage voted for Clinton. Then you can look at how it performed this time. It'll say, well, these districts that are within the congressional district, this is how they performed with this candidate and this candidate. So it kind of helps give you a handle on how between the presidential election and the congressional races, how these House districts having flipped might impact the competitiveness
right.
of otherwise maybe not competitive districts.
Right, and that story changes from cycle to cycle, because over the last 4 years, those districts didn't always vote true to how they went in national elections. When Barack Obama was reelected, many of the districts that supported him, legislative districts, remained true to their Republican legislators. And so I think the political operatives have always taken hope in that, but the story doesn't always get told that way. So you're right, the way we map things, the way we show the maps, the way our information is presented, the way you can dissect it, becomes a very valuable tool in understanding how these local areas perform.
Well, when we come back, again, we are going to find out more fascinating things about what you can find on VPAP.org and how that makes all of us better informed voters. We are also going to be talking about the upcoming legislative session, which starts January 10th, and there are tools being rolled out on VPAP you're going to want to know about. So please join us after the break.
You made your house a reality. Homeschooling yourself on loans, color-coding listings, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. If you can ace house hunting, you can do it for retirement. Get on track with tips at aceyourretirement.org.
Here's to the things that can keep us safe. Those we use all the time with hardly a thought. Those that are silently standing by to save our lives. And now, those that we carry with us everywhere we go. Many mobile devices will now bring you wireless emergency alerts, real-time information directly from local sources you know and trust. With the unique sound and vibration, you'll be in the know.
Listen, I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you judge me for having a problem. No one is going to know that I need help. I need help. I know that no one is going to judge me for having a problem. I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you listen.
Open road, here comes the Heffley family.
Whether it's a short trip or a long haul,
estimated time 47 hours.
they will beg.
You're hungry? I'm happy to provide.
They will plead.
Deep fried butter on a
stick. But whatever you do, don't wimp out.
Now you're talking?
Make them buckle up.
He can't hurt.
Remember, safety first. Cheese curls second.
Are you orange?
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the final segment of Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me from VPAP is Ric Arenstein, who is the Director of Development. And this is a very important role because VPAP is a nonprofit.
Yes,
Nonprofit means the money's got to come from somewhere to provide all of this lovely, wonderful data for the use by the media and the public. So your official role is to have people invest in the future of Virginia's democracy by investing in the tools that you're building and the presence that you have.
How much do you want?
But
No,
you know, I work in nonprofits, and it's hard. I mean, you're building great tools. You are providing all of this free to the public.
We are.
All of it free to the public.
And our our support is voluntary. I mentioned earlier we have 11,000 people who get our VA News subscription. It's free, and we ask people for voluntary contributions to it. And some people decide that they want to, but others decide that it's okay if their neighbor pays the bill. We're very fortunate. We've got over 1,000 people in Virginia now. Individuals, organizations, community organizations, political organizations, political candidates, political office holders, corporations who support us. But we made a decision 3 years ago to make sure that our support came from the broadest possible number of people that we could, because what we do is sometimes touchy. We're not calling balls and strikes, but nobody likes it when an article runs in the newspaper that tells a story in a way that may not be in their best interest and says this data was provided by the Virginia Public Access Project. We're very proud when the data is presented by the Virginia Public Access Project, but occasionally someone, depending on whose ox is getting gored, someone is unhappy with us. And in order to be independent, and in order to be true to our mission, in order to be strong, we've got to have funding from as broad a contingency of folks as we can. So we do. As I said, we have over 1,000 donors. We have an annual luncheon in May. We are probably the only political organization. We're not really a political organization, but our medium is politics. You can come to our event and find Dominion Energy's table right next to the League of Conservation Voters. Right. And it's really because we have 20 years of history of providing information that's reliable. We live in a time when fake news, if you will, has become an easy thing to throw around. But it has caused people, and they should, to have doubts about the veracity of information that they get from a variety of sources. Our data is above reproach, and we work hard at that, and we've been doing it for 20 years. We're supported, and our board is represented, and our donors are represented of the far right and the far left, and everything in between. Everything in between. So, and you're doing a great thing with education too. We really haven't touched there. We could spend several hours talking about everything, but I just do want to say you have rolled out teaching tools, educational tools, because civics education is the other step toward having more informed citizenry. We had a lot of young people participate in these statewide elections this year. First time voters, right? Absolutely, a lot of young people, but we need to move that back to the 8th grade, and you really have invested resources in that. We got a grant 3 years ago. This was part of our broadening our base. 3 years ago, we got a grant from the Reynolds Foundation, and that allowed us to build a curriculum that fit with the Board of the standards of learning in civics education for seniors in high school. And we rolled it out. And we had a pretty good response to it, but we figured out pretty quickly that in order to make it happen everywhere in Virginia, we needed to bring the teachers to us. So this year we held our first statewide symposium, brought in a dozen or more teachers, and have sent them back better informed and understanding how to use our site and the tools that are built on our site, especially for K through 12, and back to their school districts to teach their fellow teachers. We're going to try to do them in several these conferences in several locations around Virginia this year, and continue to try to seep further into the public school system.
The data is great, the way it's laid out is great, your visualizations are great, the map is great, and it's all specific to Virginia. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better teaching tool, in my opinion.
But teachers are bombarded. And so making it as user-friendly for them as we can, and bringing them in as partners in this has been really important. That's what we began to do this year. I want to talk about the legislature a little bit.
Yeah, we should do that, definitely.
And then I'm going to come back to your question about how we get money, because as the development director, I'd be doing myself and our organization a great disservice. I didn't make a bold plea for money on your show tonight. We've got two tools that deal with the legislators now. One is an aggregation tool, and that is we have begun to take scorecards from a number of organizations around the state. And we sort of introduced this during the election, but it's embedded deeply in our site. So you can't go to a page on our site and see all the scorecards. But scorecards are ratings that are done by special interest groups. And again, the criteria that we use and the number of them that we've got are laid out on our site. So our formulation is always transparent. But you can go to any legislator's site and see what the National Rifle Association thinks of them, what the VEA thinks of them, what the National Federation of Independent Businesses thinks of them. There are a variety of organizations, again, across the spectrum. And this shows if those organizations meet our criteria, it tells you, the voter, if you care about guns, this legislator or this representative may or may not be where you are, or may be where you are, and it gives you a better handle on building a portfolio for yourself of how these legislators think and how they act. The newest tool that we're rolling out during the legislative session is a vote analyzer. We're going to be taking issue by issue. You'll be able to go to our site, and I'll use guns as an example, or clean water, if you will, and you can go and see vote by vote by vote. These bills each get tagged, and we do that in conjunction with the General Assembly. They get tagged for their subject matter, and you can go and see how a particular legislator votes on guns, on clean water, on taxes, on education issues, whatever it is that you're interested in. And then you can compare his or her voting patterns to other folks in their party. Do they vote on the issue? Do they vote along party lines more than other candidates, more than other legislators do? And how do they vote versus the entire assembly? And I think what this is going to begin to help people understand is that while there are many votes that that do go down party line, in fact, most of the votes at the General Assembly are unanimous one way or the other. But to the extent that they are contested votes, while there are many that go down the Democrat and Republican line, there are a lot of issues that get decided because of regional import, or decided by the influence of gender. So there are lots of different kinds of coalitions that get formed in the General Assembly.
So you're going to be following the ERA amendment, right? Because it gets passed out of the Senate every year,
right,
which means there are Republicans. Jill Vogel leaps to mind as somebody who votes for that every year, and every year it's been killed in the House simply because it's been 66 to 34.
Right.
Now it's 49-51, there's a couple of recounts.
Right.
But to your point, something like the ERA amendment, first of all, probably has a better chance than it's ever had in its history. But there might be some people on the R side, like Jill Vogel in the Senate, who decide, yeah, I'm gonna support that. Right? So
gender's a pretty important issue in the news these days.
Well, I think, the ERA amendment, I think they only need one more state in order to ratify it, nationally if they
Right.
do that. It is a Trump administration, but so let's be optimistic. But the point is, those are the kinds of things where you're going to be able to see. I sit on the board of Equality Virginia. Employment non-discrimination has generally had bipartisan support in the past.
Right.
So we're very hopeful that this might be the year that we've got just enough people in the House to make that possible.
Yeah, and I think legislators are going to behave, on both sides of the aisle, are going to behave, I don't mean behave in terms of their
right, but in their voting.
In their
You're
voting.
right, in their voting.
Are going to behave differently in a 51-49 House than they did in a House very tilted one way or the other. I don't think that's because they are Republicans or Democrats. I just think this, and I think for the citizens of Virginia, this is an opportunity. I think that this even approach in both houses may provide greater cooperation between the governor. He certainly had spoken about that. Whether that will last beyond the
inauguration
and the State of the Commonwealth speech.
Yeah.
Only the future knows. But I really do think this is a tool that will allow Virginians to watch this progress on issues they care about.
And I will say this because I'm a great proponent of nonprofit advocacy. And there's a lot of nonprofits, some of them quite small, some of them who have not forayed into advocacy work down in Richmond. And this, again, is a tool to help them figure out who it is they're trying to talk to, how that person has voted in the past, and because when you lobby your legislators, the more that you know about them, how they have voted in the past, or indicators as far as where they stand on your issue as a nonprofit, this is very valuable information to walk through their door having.
Right, and this is a powerful new tool that we've always had the votes, but our ability to allow you to understand them in a way that brought value to your own interest is something that we're really doing. It's part of our board's initiative to broaden the base. Can I go back to fundraising for
Absolutely.
a minute? Okay. So I want to say, I told you we have 1,000 people who donate to us. We have people that donate $5 to us. We have recurring donors. We have people who donate $25,000 to us. People see VPAP as an extension of their political giving, but they see it as their civic engagement as well. You mentioned the show, the event we did in Northern Virginia.
Yeah, after Virginia votes.
Yeah, we brought 400 people together to hear the two campaigns talk a week after the election about what went right and what went wrong. It was civil. It was attended by people on both sides of the aisle. It was attended by prominent people, and it was attended by everyday citizens. And it was a moment of deep pride for us and our ability to impact civil discourse in civil behavior in our Commonwealth. And anybody who contributes to that these days is doing God's work, because that's really important.
I call VPAP one of the greatest tools of democracy, little d democracy,
right?
Because you can't have a representative form of government unless people are informed enough to make the choices that align with their values.
Right. So I'm going to say tonight that if somebody has heard this and thinks that what we're doing is of value to them, explore our website, look at it. They can go right to our homepage and hit the donate button, and they can become VPAP donors.
That's absolutely right. And it's vpap.org. On Twitter, it's VPAP Updates. And on Facebook, it's VPAP. You'll find it on Facebook. But do reach out, find out more, use the data that's out there, because this really is the best way to be an informed citizen and to invest in a good government here in Virginia. Thanks for joining us.